Mark Rogers TV talking Pac-12 football, and the king of the conference in recent years in the North Division, Stanford Cardinal, and the two best resources I, of course, can think about bringing on would be Don King from Last Word on Sports and Nick Dempsey from Rule of Tree, and lo and behold, here they are. So let's talk about this Cardinal football team, Don. We know the cliched perception of Stanford football. Let's run it. Let's outwork them. Let's outsmart them. Maybe the talent isn't given as much credit as it should be, but this has now been a sustained drive of excellence in performance on the football field. Your thoughts coming into 2016 and whether this program can continue?
For the first time in the history of the Pac-12 media poll, Stanford was picked to win the conference. Finally, after winning 3 championships in 4 years. So Stanford comes in as the favorite in the North and to win the whole thing. And this team is loaded from a skill position standpoint. I've been following Stanford football for 30-plus years now, really closely, and I've never seen this kind of talent at the skill positions. Unfortunately, the biggest question mark probably is at the most important position on the field, the one that touches the ball on every single play, the quarterback. But Ryan Burns won the nod in what was supposedly a spirited contest. Sounds like it was a high degree of integrity in it, and that he just flat out beat out Keller Chryst, and that both played well. So there's little reason to believe that he is not going to do a solid job. But mostly what we're all looking forward to is watching number 5 do his thing again starting on Friday night. So it's all about Christian McCaffrey, and candidly, when you've got him in your backfield, you have to like your team's chances.
And Nick and I talked about it a couple weeks ago. Of course, this kid has a lot of improving to do. There's just so much that he needs to work on. Well, no, it's actually that David Shaw said that he can be even better, and that seems almost impossible, but that he could possibly be a better football player in 2016 than what should have been a Heisman Trophy campaign in 2015. So, Nick, in regards to Stanford kicking off in a couple days, what do you expect to see on both sides of the football?
I actually expect, or perhaps hope, to see David Shaw sort of adapt and use his people better. A lot of people are pointing out 2014, the last time Stanford had to replace 3 guys on the offensive line, and they lost 5 games. And a lot of people like to look at that. But David Shaw was not using his people properly. He was trying to run an offense with Toby Gerhart in the backfield without Toby Gerhart. So this year, I'm very much looking forward to seeing. We know what Chris McCaffrey can do, but then who else? Who's Plan B? Who's Plan C? Rector, Bryce Love. I want to see those guys kind of step up and start making some big plays. And then on defense, I really expect the secondary to just be insanely good this year. They struggled a lot last year, but they were young. And this year they're a year older, a lot more experienced, a lot more talented. In the front 7, though, how do you replace Blake Martinez? I want to see the Stanford linebackers. They kind of got away last year from party in the backfield, which used to be their hashtag for we're going to blitz the holy heck out of you, and your quarterback might not leave the field on his own power. It's going to be, and they got away from that. I want to see him bring it back on defense. But we know Christian McCaffrey. It's everybody else who I'm excited to see step up and be much more of a complete team this year.
Don, who have you heard about, maybe seen a glimpse of in the previous season or two that, you're a little bit anxious to see fill a more impactful role?
Yeah, so Solomon Thomas is back at one of the defensive ends, and that kid's going to be an All-American. I think he was better last year than he actually got credit for, and a lot of people thought he was really, really good. That the scoop and score in the Pac-12 championship game at USC, I mean, the kid looked like he looked like a running back once he picked the ball up, and he's a almost 300-pound defensive end. He's an absolute athletic freak, and he's a beast. And Harrison Phillips, who tore his ACL in the first game last year against Northwestern, is back, and all reports are that he's at an outstanding fall camp. So the defensive line looks to be much sturdier and deeper than it was a year ago. despite losing Brennan Scarlett to the NFL. So I think the defensive line is going to improve. I think the secondary is going to be outrageously good. Also, given the return of Zach Hoffpower, who spent some time in minor league, and Nick is right that the linebacking core is the question mark, but I don't know that I share his concern. I think it's more even than it's typically been, but I also think it's deeper. And the coaching staff apparently is insanely excited about Bobby Okereke, who had a fantastic camp and a strong spring as well. So I think the defense is going to be the big surprise, and that's where Stanford's championship hopes rest.
Isn't that weird to say about Stanford?
Yes,
defense?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But I think it's true.
Yeah.
I have come around, when the media poll came out, I was like, okay, these people are nuts. Stanford is not going to win the Pac-12 again. And then camp has gone on, and you've watched and observed and read, and I'm like, you know what? I don't think I can pick against Stanford to win the Pac-12 this year. I think Washington's going to be really good and tough. I think Wazoo is going to be good this year. Oregon, you always have to be worried about given the talent that they've got in the North. USC and UCLA are both going to be really, really good in the South. But I don't think any of those teams is going to be as complete as Stanford is. So if Burns does his job, and I am betting on the fact that he will, I think Stanford's going to be tough to beat, at least in the conference. Will they be good enough to qualify for the college football playoff? That's a tougher question because the schedule is brutal.
Yeah.
And that's why I can believe Stanford's going to win the Pac-12 amongst the other reasons on the field in terms of the landscape of college football. If you point to every other conference, there are teams that we believe to be elite, even though maybe the entire conference isn't close to the Pac-12, where the Pac-12, wow, there's 5 or 6 or 7 teams that are pretty close. Stanford's distinguished itself. USC, UCLA should be really strong, but it's the best 10-team conference in college football outside of Colorado and Oregon State. Very few soft touches in the Pac-12, and that's been the national narrative when you hear people predicting or projecting the college football playoff. It's that, again, is the Pac-12 going to beat up on itself and be left out of the college football playoff?
My concerns are their schedule is very front-loaded. So the units that have to work together as a group, how quickly can they get together? They start on Friday, they get a week off, and then it's USC, UCLA, Washington State, Notre Dame, all back to back to back. So they don't get that opening week or two cupcake where they can kind of get in rhythm without really risking anything. They've got to basically be on from week one. So the linebacking core, the offensive line, any of those units that if all you need is one weak link and the whole thing breaks down, that's where my concern is, because they don't really they're at full speed right off the bat. In that regard, it might be helpful if they have their bye week the second week of the season, but they don't really get a breather till mid to late October. So they've got to be on fire right out of the gate.
I'm right there with Nick. Those are my same concerns. I'm not that worried about Burns. In general, I think the defense is going to be strong. The question is going to be gelling on the offensive line and in the middle of the defense. The linebacking core, and in specific, the middle linebackers. I think the outside backers are going to be just fine.
Yeah.
So it's the inside linebacker positions and it's the offensive line, and I do think those are the concern points, and therefore that's when I'm most concerned to see week one against K-State.
So if either one of you have a season prediction waiting to be unveiled on your respective sites, we respect that and we'll point people in that direction. But if not, if it's already out there, can you let us know what do you think about the outcome for the Cardinal this year?
I haven't published anything, and given that there are 48 hours, probably won't. I'll have my normal picks piece coming out in the next couple of days across the nation. But I do think Stanford wins the Pac-12. I don't think Stanford goes undefeated by any means. It's just too difficult a road. I think this. If you had asked me 3 weeks ago, I'd have told you 9-3. Right now, I'll tell you 10-2. Much like last year, for the regular season. Wins the Pac-12 championship game, and then goes to the Rose Bowl to play the number 6 or 7 ranked team in the nation, because I think Stanford wins the Pac-12 and the Pac-12 gets shut out of the college football playoff again for the second straight year.
This one's tough because if the schedule is any more spaced out, I look at the schedule and I feel like Oregon or Stanford could beat any one of these teams. When you lump them all in right after each other, and you have to play what, bye week, second week, so you're going to have to play 11, 12 weeks straight if you're going to win the Pac-12. That's a lot to ask from anybody. So I feel like they're probably going to drop a second game. If the schedule was spaced out, I'd have them 11-1. But I feel like 10-2 is probably going to be the way to go, and they'll go to the Rose Bowl unless there's some sort of absolute anarchy and a 2-loss team gets in, which I would be more than okay with because that would be awesome to watch. But 10-2 feels well. 11-2, I think they're going to win the Pac-12 game. I look at the schedule, like I think they could beat any single one of these teams individually if it was spaced out, or if they took the SEC route and threw in a few Furmans throughout the season. But don't. And I think they're going to drop one early in the first couple weeks, and then probably struggle at Notre Dame. I feel like 10-2 is the way to go. But I will say this: if they're undefeated come Halloween, or no, October 15th, if they're still undefeated, that's the Notre Dame game. I can't see how they don't go to the playoffs at that point.
I completely agree with that. It's just it's like a huge if, though.
Yeah.
And the two things that are horrifying to me are at UCLA followed by at Washington immediately on a short week. That's really scary. With Chris Peterson in his third year. And then at Notre Dame, just because bad things happen to visiting teams in South Bend.
And in between that, you got the Cougs who are going to throw in some crazy stuff at you.
They will, but honestly, Stanford's been great at home and won't get caught by surprise by this year's Washington State team. So I think Stanford can handle that, and I think Stanford can even handle on the road at Autzen this year. Until we see that Oregon legitimately has a quarterback, which we don't yet know,
or a defense.
Or a defense, which we also don't yet know. Then I actually don't feel horrible about that. But getting by UCLA and Washington in back-to-back weeks and getting over the hump in South Bend, tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a tougher 5-game stretch in all of college football than USC, UCLA, Washington, Washington State, Notre Dame, with 3 of those games on the road. But survive that, as Nick points out, and hey, it's smooth sailing. But that's the key. Survive that.
That's right.
Most likely 4-1 is going to be a success against those 5 games. You get through at 4-1, you're in great shape. The oddities of the schedule, of course, is that after the Friday night opener, you get what should be 8 days off because you're going to play your second game. No, you got 15 days off because you've got a bye week in week 2. And also, as Nick heard me just rant about the last time we talked, this Rice November 26th game that circling my
epic clash.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah.
And I work with a guy from Rice, and he's very much looking forward to the game, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
The Stanford Cardinal couldn't do a season preview without these two guys, Nick Dempsey from Rule of Tree and also Don King from Last Word on Sports. Thanks, guys.